Welcome to Sarajevo in Bosnia, a gorgeous city that's often called the Jerusalem of Europe. And in this video, we're going to explore one of the more interesting cities in the world. It's 4 p.m. right now in a nice summer day in Sarajevo. This is actually my second trip to Sarajevo. This is one of the most fascinating cities I've ever been to, and one of the coolest small cities in the world probably. This place is a melting pot of civilizations. This is where the Eastern and the Western Roman Empire split. This is where the Turks or the Ottomans and the Austro-Hungarians fought for centuries to take control of this land. And there's probably no better place to start the story than in the city's old town, which is where we're heading right now. So the modern city of Sarajevo, as you know it, was founded back in the 1450s by the Ottomans as basically a trading city where merchants from all over the region came here, paid taxes to the city, and sold their goods. And this was actually a very important trading center for the next couple of hundred years. Behind me is this place called Tashlihan, which I'm hoping I'm pronouncing right. And this was one of the very first inns that was built to accommodate for the merchants that came here to the old town of Sarajevo. This is where they stayed with their horses and everything. You can see the remains from the outside, sort of. But if you go downstairs, there's still a market underneath where people are still selling stuff. And this market was intentionally sort of built below the ground so it didn't get as hot as the surrounding city and the spices did not get spoiled. I'm in the bazaar of the old town of Sarajevo, and I've never been to a place outside of Turkey that looks so much like Turkey. Back in the day, this whole bazaar was where people came to sell all their goods, and there was basically an alley dedicated for every kind of goods. So that kind of market doesn't really exist anymore, and you'll mostly find cafes and other little shops in the bazaar, except for this one alley called Coppersmith's Alley, where people are still selling copper goods the same way they have been for the last 500 years. Mainly more for tourists these days than for people trying to buy copper as a necessity, but it's still a really cool place and probably my favorite alley in the whole bazaar, the old town of Sarajevo. Now it's time for my favorite part of the day, which is getting some good Bosnian food. It's really hot today. So there are so many types of good food in the Balkans. It'll probably take me like a 30-minute video to just go over my favorite ones. The most popular ones in Bosnia at least are cevapcici or cevapi. The food is very similar in most countries in the Balkans. The big difference in Bosnia is that because it's halal food, it's not made from pork and mostly made from lamb. Other places, pleskavica and cevapi would definitely have some pork in it, but today I'm eating this thing called sarma. The plate is hot. Which is like this stuffed meat wrapped in cabbage. And it's great to have with some mashed potatoes on the side. Pretty much like everywhere in the region. You usually get bread on the side. Different kinds of bread too. This is so good. I'm gonna stop talking for the next few minutes and just enjoy my meal. So right now I'm in a cafe in Bosnia, drinking some Bosnian coffee, and coffee culture is huge in this country. Bosnians are some of the highest consumers of coffee per capita in the world, and the way they usually do it is they come to these cafes and have a coffee for like 30 minutes, and this is like pretty strong coffee, so this is more like 2 or 3 cups of coffee, not 1. And usually they just come here, sit with friends, and smoke a lot of cigarettes, because Bosnians smoke a lot of cigarettes. This is very similar to the way Turkish coffee is prepared, but not exactly the same. There are some distinct differences, and there's definitely a difference in the taste, but it's still pretty decent. I definitely still prefer my Americano, but this is also good. me is the Gazi Husrev Beg Mosque, which was built by the Ottomans here in the 16th century, pretty much in the middle of Old Town in Sarajevo. This is still the largest historic mosque in Bosnia-Herzegovina, so worth a visit. You probably can't go inside this one, there's strict dress codes and all that. But yeah, on to the next one. So after approximately 400 years of Ottoman rule, in 1878 all the superpowers of Europe got together and signed the Treaty of Berlin, which handed power over Sarajevo and Bosnia from the Ottomans, which was basically a dying empire at this point, to the Austro-Hungarians for the next 30 years. People kind of have mixed feelings to this day about that period, because yes, on one hand it was a foreign power occupying the place, but on the other hand, they made some massive leaps in technology or just advancements in general in those next 30 years. They spent a lot of money on infrastructure and architecture, as you can probably tell from the architecture of every single building behind me. And the country basically went from being a feudal system that was run by the Ottomans to a more advanced technological place. One thing that I find really interesting is that on this very street, there's this point maybe like 100 meters that way, called the meeting point of cultures, where there's basically a line. And on one side of the line, everything is Austrian architecture. On the other side, everything is more like the old Ottoman architecture. It's such a weird mix that you pretty much don't see anywhere else in any city in the world. Fun fact to remember, if you're walking past the river and see some trams going next to you, Sarajevo actually has the oldest tram network, or electric tram network, in all of Europe, and the second oldest in the world after San Francisco. These things have been around since the 1870s. Right now I'm in this intersection next to the Latin Bridge in the center of Sarajevo, and this is probably one of the most historical spots in the world. So remember how the Austro-Hungarian empires got control of Sarajevo and Bosnia essentially, and then they were supposed to leave after 30 years, and Bosnians were sort of hoping for some independence, but they ended up never leaving. So there's a lot of anti-Austro-Hungarian sentiments sort of brewing in the region, especially from the Serbians who were right next door and had their own independent kingdom at this point and were not a fan of Austro-Hungarians trying to take over territory around them or their own territory. So there was this extreme right-wing group that were willing to do whatever was necessary to remove the Austro-Hungarians from power, and they recruited essentially kids between the age of 17 to 23 to try to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was next in line to come to power to rule the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So on 28 June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand came to Sarajevo to visit his subjects, and then while he was driving around, there was a big assassination attempt that was botched at several points, but he was still driving around the place. And then his car, which looks a lot like this car behind me, this is a replica, was not the original one, was making a turn right here in this bridge when this 19-year-old assassin called Princip came out with his gun, fired it several times, killed Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sofia. When it was found out that rebels were essentially trained or linked to being trained by Serbia, was behind this assassination, Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Serbia was allied with Russia, so Russia declared war on the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then Germany and France, there was like conflicts in that region too. They started war with each other too, and essentially World War I started because of this one bullet that was fired here. Crazy stuff. Behind me is this Roman Catholic cathedral that was built in the 19th century. It's a pretty cool building, but I think what is a lot more interesting is what is in front of this building. If you just take a few more steps outside of the main gate, you'll come across this fragmented block of concrete with red paint inside it, and it looks fractured. And there's about 200 of these blocks throughout the cities, and these are called Sarajevo Roses. These are spots where the concrete was essentially destroyed from bombings during the Siege of Sarajevo that lasted 3 years and 11 months in the 90s. Unfortunately, World War I and World War II was not the last time this part of the world saw violence and warfare. The Yugoslav wars broke out after the Kingdom of Yugoslavia sort of broke apart in the 90s, and it was a bloody conflict which claimed the lives of more than 130,000 people. And no city was probably as adversely affected by this like Sarajevo, which was under siege from all sides for almost 4 years. It was being constantly bombed by shells and mortar. Civilians were constantly being targeted by snipers hiding up on the hills of Sarajevo, and this bloodshed continued for a long, long time. The craziest part about this is not even that long ago. Everyone in this city who's my age or older remembers this very, very well. That's something I guess you should be very mindful of and very respectful of if you ever get the chance to visit Sarajevo. I'm probably going to talk more about the conflict in the Balkans and Bosnia in a different video, but if you want to know more about it, please do look up the history of this place. Right now I'm at the Yellow Fortress, which is right off the side of Sarajevo, a little bit uphill, but it is without a doubt my favorite sunset spot in the whole city. Just get the most amazing views ever from this place. Great place to grab a beer too, if you're into that. Yeah, I'm recording.
Oh fuck.
Picked the wrong person. I think I'm gonna end the vlog here. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you want to see more videos from the Balkans and everywhere else around the world, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to follow these stories in real time, feel free to add me on Instagram. I usually post my stories on a much more real-time basis there. Alright, I'll catch you guys on the next one.